all we have in this life is dollars and days. And I take that to mean is like, are the dollars worth the days, right? Whatever we're spending our time on in our work, and that could be work in the home, work in your community, work in your kids' school, or work for money at your job, is that where we want to invest our time? Right? And am I actually choosing things that are deeply aligned, both things I believe in and want to spend time on, but also help me do my best work in an authentic way that, don't deplete like my emotional or spiritual or mental energy in ways that are unhealthy. In my spiritual tradition, like work is worship. They share the same word in ancient Hebrew, like Avodah, right? So I deeply believe what I do with my time matters. And I'm like called to invest my time in the world, but it's not like to sell it to some company and just like get money in return and check out at 5, right? It's like, do I work with companies that like are making the world a better place? And do I work in a way that doesn't shortchange being able to plug into my church or spend time with my son or support my husband chasing his goals or be present for a friend who's having a tough day and be able to like go bring dinner? So it's like, can I do this work differently? Are we actually building companies that are about what we're creating in the world, not just a valuation or an exit or a Times cover or 40 under 40 list? Those things fade. Those tend to not be the things people remember about you many, many years later. It's about how you made them feel and what you put into the world. Just tune out the noise and ask yourself, ask your body, ask your soul, like, when have I experienced the most joy? What do I actually believe? What do I know to be true? There are usually only a handful of things, if anything, that we just know deep in our soul are true. And how does that shape how we want to show up in the world and do in the world? And to like then come out of that space with yourself and ask the people around you like what they see in you. Often we have a very harsh view, and it's like we need those people around us to be like, don't talk about my friend Kate, or don't talk about my friend Allie like that. Like we talk to ourselves so harshly. Like actually hear about what your strengths and greatness is from the people around you, and use those data points. Like almost act like an investigator, a collector, like just the same way our kids go on a scavenger hunt. Treat it like a scavenger hunt to say like, what brings me joy? What brings me purpose and meaning?
Kate Kruizenga isn't running from startup culture. She's rewriting the terms of engagement. 10 years into scaling companies, a church elder's reminder that all we have are dollars and days made her ask whether her calendar earned its paycheck. So Kate hit pause. 6 Slack-free weeks, long hikes, and the spiritual insight that the Hebrew word Avodah means both work and worship. When she returned, it wasn't to another badge-collecting C-suite, but to a fractional people ops practice aimed at cultures where profits, purpose, and parenting can actually coexist. In this conversation, we trace her pivot from extraction, we win, you lose, to what she calls the outer ring, a quadruple bottom line model that pays bonuses even when targets slip, trusting generosity to multiply impact. If you've wondered whether you can work in an energizing and abundant environment, stick around. So Kate, thank you so much for joining today for Practically on Purpose. I'm so excited to chat with you and share your story with the good people. Looking at your LinkedIn, so like preparing for this, it seems like you've always been a people person in like many senses of the term, as I think people will start to get a feel for. Can you give me a little bit of like an overview of your career arc?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. Like it all makes sense in the rearview mirror. I think at the time I was just honestly chasing like challenge and impact. And I think over time I learned to like align that with my values and my strengths, which really are around relationships and people. So I think in short, I graduated with one of those general liberal arts degrees and decided I wanted to try and make the world better. So I leapt into the world of education nonprofits, and I really enjoyed that. And after a few years of doing that, I had somebody who was a bit further in her career who worked in the chief of staff office at Kaiser who sponsored me and was really like, Kate could be great for this role. She's a great problem solver. And that was kind of my first big career opportunity and leap. So, I knew nothing about healthcare. either IT or HR, but got thrown into a role designing the people strategy for all of IT at Kaiser, which is massive. It was like 14,000 people.
Oh my God.
But, it taught me to kind of like pound the pavement, build relationships with a lot of people, try and really deeply hear and understand them. Because if you're going to synthesize this big, complicated strategy, are you deeply understanding the people you're trying to serve? Are you representing their viewpoints faithfully? Are you giving them what they really need to do their best work? So I spent like the first year building this big machine and then built out a team and kind of implemented that strategy. And it was just a really fun journey. But I got feedback that I'm very creative and operate with a lot of velocity. I think that was like the kind
Mm.
word one of the execs used when talking about me in Kaiser, obviously at 200,000 and with labor unions, a lot of things like industry changing scale, but also not particularly fast paced. So I had a few nonprofits friends who had made the leap into tech. I decided to do the same. So I joined Dropbox right on the heels of the IPO and
Wow.
joined their people team and kind of said, I think I want to do this HR strategy work. I want to do it a bit more creatively, a little bit more fast paced. And I learned from incredible people. But in that spirit of like impact and challenge and always learning, I realized I knew nothing about for-profit businesses or software. So I did an 18-month tour of duty on the business development team as the chief of staff. So that was like hard and
Wow.
challenging in a lot of ways. But I'm so glad I did it. And I think learned a lot and I've coached a lot of like mentees about like take those opportunities to just learn, do something different. It will actually show up really well. And it's kind of become part of my brand as a people leader is that I deeply understand the business. I kind of understand the dynamics our go-to-market leaders or product leaders or engineering leaders are dealing with. And after that, that's when I leapt into the crazy world, an intense world of startups that's just 24/7, 365. So
Yep.
I put 150% into building parallel domain, and I had an amazing mission, an incredible founder, wonderful team, loved building that company. And we went big, 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 and then realized maybe the TAM is over here and the team should be this big. So I got to put my name on that layoff list first and exited out of that. And then I think on like the heels of that grief, made a couple misaligned work choices, right? Like where I tried to jump into something that looked great on paper that was the next logical step on like how I must achieve impact by the world's metrics. And I did that like kind of twice in a row. One of them only lasted like a hot minute. It was clearly like right mission company founders, but the way I'd be positioned in the actual day to day was just not right.
Not
And you
right.
realize
Yeah.
that quickly. And then the other, I jumped onto a founding team. And what I discovered with that is like, that doesn't necessarily give you control to make it whatever you want. It is kind of an animal of itself. And we did a big acquisition where I was kind of like, unfortunately, put in the position of like, be the hammer to make it this thing that it does not want to be. And that was really misaligned to how I like to show up and live my values.
Mm.
So yeah, that kind of led to like my big career reimagining and break, I guess. So like last summer, I kind of stepped away from that and was like, think I've been doing the whole thing wrong. Yeah.
Ooh, and I definitely want to spend some time talking about that. I feel like I can relate a lot to having a big career break, and I know that a lot of our listeners are either in the middle of one or contemplating one, so that's something that I want to double click on for sure. I'd be curious to hear what so you talked about joining. You had so much luck, right, of starting off at a company that was really excited to let you take on a whole lot at once, and then going to a company like Dropbox, and where they were so committed to making sure that you showed up as a great people person by learning the business. And then you had a few missteps along the way. And I feel like, mistakes get a bad rap. I think that very often when we're high achievers, we think about mistakes as the place where we did something wrong or we failed. It's not tidy. But for me, I feel like mistakes, and maybe this is also like as a mom of two little kids, it's mistakes is how we learn. So I would be curious to hear from these two missteps, what are some things that you learned either about yourself in
Mm,
terms of your personality, your priorities, or even how you think about career?
yeah, for sure. I think the big one is around like, what environments make you thrive, what work makes you thrive, how do you show up to do your best work? and maybe what looks like on paper the right job or the right mission or the right thing you want to do. I think in one of these cases, it was like an incredible mission, really amazing founders. I could see opportunities to like
Mm,
leverage my strengths in being a business oriented people leader. Like, oh, all these things are like not quite done, even though they're quite deep into the startup journey. I could see all these needs across the team. I was excited about the product they were putting into the world. But honestly, how they had like leveled the role, where they had positioned it in the organization, like was counter signal to that, right? It was kind of like, this needs to be tactical for a beat because there's so much on fire. We don't really want to use this as a strategic lever right now. And like, we've
mm,
reinforced that to you by like where we positioned it. And I think I thought I could come in and like build a roadmap and a plan and like maybe change everyone's mind. And like, that's not actually how it works. So I think like reading those signs in the interview process is really important, right?
yeah.
And believing people the first 3 times they tell you like what the thing is, or reading those like soft signals is like they might use language about like what they want this role to be, because like visionary founders are thinking 4 or 5 years in ahead.
Or they're
I think
pitching you because
yeah,
they
so or
can't
they're
get out of that
pitching you.
mode. Hmm.
Right. But it's like I think it's also like we don't do enough work. And I think I've learned that as a people leaders. One of the first things I tend to do coming into organizations, I'll share my working with me document with folks. I share it with like founders I'm talking about working with, so they understand like I do move really fast. I'm pretty decisive. I'm going to ask you like a million hard questions. I spend more time on the beginning getting aligned, and then I'll run and
Mm,
then I'll loop back to you. Like I'm a really loyal person. I'm a verbal processor. I actually unplug from 5 to 8 at night. Like, are these things going to be aligned in how we show up to work? Or are they going to be a chafe or a mismatch, right? People
mm,
don't have to work with me to do great people work. So I think understanding how to do that in a job interview process, or even once you get into a company, being honest about what you need and asking people the same questions, even if they don't have that doc. Because then I think you can set up better work relationships and build some trust,
yes.
especially in those relationships where it's like, where our work styles might be actually kind of diametrically opposed, or our values might be opposed.
Mm,
How can we like acknowledge that and be like, okay, we need to spend the extra effort on alignment, right? Like, what do we actually both value, or what do we both want here? How can we put the company first so like it tunes out some of the
some
noise?
of the noise. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny as you're talking, it's like reminding me a little bit of like dating in my 20s, where it's like, believe him when he tells you who he is and what he's like, and don't try to change him. And I
Advice I
think that that's
definitely needed in college.
right. And I think that it's something though that, maybe we learn that lesson in dating, but then when it comes to interviewing, sometimes the job search or the opportunity can take on a life of its own. So we project what we want to achieve onto it rather than letting the opportunity and the folks there speak for themselves. It's a hard one to learn when we're excited, but it's cool to hear that you show up, even in the interview process as like, here's who I am, here's what I love doing, here's what I'm not great at, and optimizing for alignment rather than optimizing for that specific role.
Yes, exactly. So hard lesson to learn, but I think especially now that I do client work and juggle potentially a couple of clients at once, if there's not deep alignment and there's going to be a lot of collaborative friction, then it's not going to work for anyone. It's not going to serve anyone. So I've learned to like do that work and then give work away, if it's not aligned.
If it's not, yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about your career break. And you wrote a post on LinkedIn. I love your content on LinkedIn, by the way. But you say that stepping away can actually be one of the most strategic things that you can do. And again, that's something that can feel really counterintuitive for high achieving folks, where it's like, no, 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 I did this thing and then I have to do the next thing. The idea of taking a pause or stepping back is really, it like doesn't even enter our minds somehow. So tell me a little bit more about your recent career break. How did that come about?
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of stepped away from this misaligned role, and it was really funny. I was like forced to actually do the work because it was like the Friday before Memorial Day. My family was going on this church retreat with our church. And I had been like grinding so hard and then dealing with like, how do I wind out of this company really fast? I hadn't even looked at the agenda, right? So I like show up just like knowing what time I was supposed to be there with my family. I walk in, the whole theme is about like rest and purpose. And I was like, oh
Mm.
boy, well, I suddenly have a whole lot of time to like put this into practice. But at the same time, it was kind of like uncomfortable. It's like, oh, the universe is like telling me to rest. And I'm like a hustle and grind person. I still like, even though I like deeply in my soul realize I've just been trying to like force things, trying to do things that I'm supposed to and climb this ladder. And it's very competitive in Silicon Valley,
Mm-hmm.
but like none of this is working. So like, let's try this other thing on for size. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, I like sat in that for a while. I like took long hikes, talked to a lot of people, and I reflect on a couple things. One is that, I had gotten some advice about 10 years ago that like really struck me and has always stuck with me. And it was like an elder from our church said, like, all we have in this life is dollars and days. And I take that to mean is like, are the dollars worth the days, right? Like, whatever we're
Mm.
spending our time on in our work, and that could be work in the home, work in your community, work in your kids' school, or work for money at your job. Is that where we want to invest our time? Right. And am I actually choosing things that are deeply aligned, both like things I believe in and want to spend time on, but also help me do my best work in an authentic way that, don't deplete like my emotional or spiritual or mental energy in ways that are unhealthy. So it's like, what does it look to chase things that are different? And then I went to a lot of people I'd worked deeply with who I trusted, who I knew could tell me, like, I think you're wrong about that. And I'd lean in and be like, tell me more, instead of the people where it's like, I'm trying to challenge it. And
Yeah.
so I went and sought those people out and I said, like, what am I great at? If you could design a role for me, what would it be? And I think I heard like overall, like, quit trying to do the business, general biz strategy stuff that like the world tells you is important. You love people strategy, double down on that. You are a change agent, right? So you can be a little bit abrasive, but you deeply love people through it and you can like propel things, like, right? So like look for companies that are building or in transformations or seasons of change. Like that's your sweet spot.
Mm.
You color a bit outside the lines and you like to create novel solutions. A company like trying to box it in for IPO is never going to be your fit.
Yeah.
1,000 to 3,000, you don't love it. So like work with early stage. So I started piecing together like, oh, what does this look like? And then I was like, well, a lot of those companies, they don't need a full-time people leader. So like that's how I kind of started coming to the aha moment of like, these are people who desperately need this. They're early on founders who like people is their biggest spend. It's a huge investment. It shapes their culture. It shapes their velocity. It really needs a strategist and a partner behind it, but they can't necessarily afford somebody full time. So like, what if they did have this fractional partner? What if I could work for the few values aligned people at once and actually
Mm.
like dig into this work at this early stage where it shapes the rest of the company's trajectory? Like, how special would it be
Yeah.
to be part of that early on? So like that started to feel really aligned,
Mm-hmm.
coupled with the fact that like, my family is in a challenging season. My husband travels a ton. He's also at a startup. My son was diagnosed with dyslexia. So it's been like a whole journey figuring out how to
Mm.
get him to read. And I have one kid. I want to like be a great mom to him and like show up well. And it's like, how do I fit these puzzle pieces together where like in my spiritual tradition, like work is worship. They share the same word in ancient Hebrew, like Avodah, right? So I deeply believe what I do with my time matters. And I'm like called to invest my time in the world. But it's
Mm.
not like to sell it to some company and just like get money in return and check out at 5, right? It's like, do I work with companies that like are making the world a better place? And do I work in a way that doesn't shortchange being able to plug into my church or spend time with my son or support my husband chasing his goals or be present for a friend who's having a tough day and be able to like go bring dinner? So it's like, can I do this work differently?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds to me like you're really taking that advice about measuring life in terms of dollars and days, and it seems to me, I'm sure you're doing well financially. Actually, I do want to talk about abundance later, but
Yeah.
it feels like you're really optimizing for rich days and a rich life overall, both in the sense of abundance and fullness, but also in the sense of, yeah, like, like a rich soup or a rich dish, like something that is like delicious and wonderful that you want to engage in. And I feel like for a lot of us, for me at least, I'll say I received a lot of message. It's like, oh, work has to be hard. It has to be challenging. I feel like, especially for lawyers, we're like, so many of us hate what we do. And we're like, but then you're so good at it, right? So then it becomes a bit of this self-perpetuating feeling that, like, maybe the more that I dislike it, the better I'm doing in some weird way. But it's always so inspiring for me to talk to people who, like you, are solving for a whole life and solving for a life that can light them up.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
I'd be curious to hear, how long was your break? How long did you want to give yourself for rest? And then when did you want to start dipping your toe into something else? And what did that look like?
Right. And I think like ideally I would have given myself like 3 or 4 or 6 months or something like that to rest, right? But I think like it's a journey and you also have to like know yourself, right? So a challenge for me was just like I rolled out of this before Memorial Day and I was like, I'm not even going to talk to people about work until July 15th. And that felt terrifying. It was like 6 whole weeks where I would like not, wouldn't like pretty much wouldn't go on LinkedIn unless somebody tagged me or somebody needed help or
Mm-hmm.
something. Like I'm not going to go look at job postings. I'm not going to take chats with things I'm being introduced to. They'll be like, can we schedule that for after July 15th? And that was just a really hard practice. And like bless the people who can like take a whole year off and like travel the world. That was also not conducive to my life. For me, like the 6 weeks felt right, where it's just like I just first needed to train my body to not like go pick up my phone to like habitually try and check Slack, right? So it was like unlearning some of those rhythms. And then I
Mm,
tried to start soft exploring the next 6 weeks of like I had those like personal board of director conversations about what could I be great at, asking like VCs in my network like, hey, are there any companies that you think would be really aligned for me and why, right? And ended up kind of falling in to a fractional opportunity. I was starting to like ask the questions about like, could fractional be right? And then sure enough, like one of the VCs in our network was like, oh, like I have this turnaround company. Would you want to consider it? Right. And, like I took my time there too. It was like 4 weeks of back and forth because this is the thing I jump into. It was certainly a gnarly one, but
mm-hmm.
ended up taking the leap because I think the CEO of the turnaround CEO like really wanted to do the work. And I just saw an option to kind of like test this thesis, like in part-time hours, can I create a big impact for an earlier stage company? And like, because I have this thesis about like creating a redemptive and a renewing vision in the world, this is
Mm,
a company that's been broken in some ways. Can I help it thrive again? Can I help the people inside it thrive again? And I think for me, it was kind of like I was on the fence, like, ooh, is this the right thing? Like, do I do fractional? Is this the right way? It's like messy. I remember some
yeah.
friends being like, are you sure about that?
You're sure, like, that's the one you want to jump to?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
right. They had some like pretty scary former core values, and it's like if anybody listens to this who like work there, they'd be like, "Yeah, like some of these just did not resonate." And I remember some friends like looked up the company and saw that they were like, "This is so not you," and I'm like,
Hmm.
"Yes, but like they want to do the work to change this, and
Mm,
they want that partner." And I think that's one of the biggest gifts you can get in HR work is the people who want to do that work together, saying like, "This isn't working. Let's figure it out together." And I just saw like that big opportunity. So as I sat with my husband, I was like, "Well, let's try fractional on for size. This is one where if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But
yeah.
like if it does, how beautiful that could that be for the people there, for the company. Like it could be goodness." So
Oh,
yeah,
that's so beautiful. That's so
yeah,
beautiful. Um, I'd like to, it sounded like you were like gathering a lot of information in the process, reflecting a lot. You
yeah.
mentioned a personal board of directors. For people who aren't familiar with the concept, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. this is definitely like a secret sauce for me. I have a post on my LinkedIn if you want like a cheat sheet on it. This isn't something formal where I like go around to people in my life and I'm like, will you join my personal board of directors? It
You
would be
have
like
been
very,
appointed.
yes, you've been appointed. I think it would actually change the dynamic. I don't know if anybody in
Mm,
my personal board of directors, maybe some people suspect because I ask them these like deep philosophical questions quite a bit. But the idea is like find these people who can speak truth into your life. And I think like my litmus tests on this are like, do these people know me really well? Have they been in the trenches with me? They've seen me at my best and worst. They know my strengths and weaknesses. Do we have enough trust? Because I like want people who can tell me I'm wrong and tell me no and like don't, right? Because like I think a lot of us recoil from feedback because we've had those negative feedback experiences. Like I love that some people on my personal board of directors, like even very recently in like the last couple of days, have been like, "You're wrong about that," and it's like I love having those people
that
in
they
my
tell
life.
you that.
Yeah, that they can tell me that and that like I'm just like, "Oh, it makes me curious. Like what am I missing? This person like wants the best for me." That's the other piece. Like are these people my champions, my sponsors who like want to see me thrive? That it's not like some angle on what they could get connected to next or like a feather in their
Yes.
cap. They just want my thriving and well-being and they'll make time. Um so this can evolve over time, right? Like early in my career, it looked a little bit different. When I was in grad school, there were like school pieces mixed in with personal pieces. Like as I became a parent, it looked different. I suddenly needed some moms who kind of understood that journey on my personal board of directors.
Hmm.
Um, but building that crew who can kind of speak into my life and then challenging myself, right? To ask for feedback before making decisions, right? Like I think too much of like Western and American life is very, very individualistic. That was like one of my biggest takeaways from grad school because like huge amounts of the folks in my graduate degree program were not from America and they were just like we don't do these things alone. Like
That's so interesting.
what are you doing? Right? Like my intercultural communication class was fantastic because they only would allow like one American or like Westerner per group. It's like I was with folks from like Korea and South America and a number of
Mm,
folks from sub-Saharan Africa. And it was just so great to see them like recoil at like how I would write something or how I would engage a situation. I was like, I never thought this was weird. I just thought it was normal. And it's like
yeah.
actually challenging that assumption of like, we weren't made to make decisions alone and in isolation and
Mm,
carry burdens by ourselves and have to have all the answers. Like wisdom used to be collective. Wisdom used to be like embodied in your community, in your circle. It wasn't just like one tiny nuclear family of like 3 or 4 people trying to raise kids, make decisions, manage all the finances, hold it all together through crisis, right?
yeah.
And so like I think that also shaped it. Like I had a really difficult experience like having my son, which also forced me to depend on community both in
Mhm.
personal life and work. So I think that coupled with my personal board of directors, like my husband also is like great at using this practice, right? Like he had an opportunity for our whole family to like relocate, take a job that was shiny somewhere far away. I remember we had a dinner with like 10, 12 people that we just deeply respected and admired. And we like told them all about the options and they gave us really good advice. And like ultimately we decided it wasn't the right option. It was hard for my husband because his gut instinct at the
He's like, "Oh,
time, like
I wanna
over a
do that."
decade ago, was like, actually, I want to take that. And he was like a little bit salty for 3 months, but he also kind of had peace that I trust this wisdom. And turns
Yes.
out like the job he's in now, which has been kind of a dream job, came along like 7, 8 months later.
Mhm.
And had we done that, this wouldn't have happened. And then like on the heels of that, it was just like, this is why we make wise decisions together. Um,
Mm,
so personal board of directors, huge advocate. Definitely find your crew.
yeah, and it's I think that so many of us, yeah, feel like we have to go it alone, and it's so helpful to remember that we feel it on our birthdays or something, like days where we get a lot of love or
Mm,
weddings or something like that, but there are so many people who are cheering for us, and, like, we can all think of people that we're cheering for, and these don't even have to be like, I think for your personal board of directors, it should definitely be people who know you really well and have seen you in a lot of situations, but I have just seen how many people lose ties even cheer for each other, are excited for
So
each other's success. And we should tap into that networked wisdom because we can't see around every corner. So I think it's cool that you did it in systematic ways, both when you were thinking about this career break and what your next move is, but even hearing the story about your husband considering an opportunity. Um, it also is helpful, right? Like, I feel like sometimes in those big moments as a family, um, it can be hard sometimes to get, it's like we're thinking about the unit, but our egos and each of our preferences and things obviously get involved. We can't help it. But like adding some more voices to the conversation, whether it's other families that are at the same stage as you, whether, ideally it includes some elders too, who can see like with a decade or
mm,
two wisdom of like, how does
that's
this play
interesting.
out in a marriage, right?
Yeah.
So it's very cool to hear just about, yeah, like bringing some collective wisdom into things. So I'm thinking about when you and I met. I remember we were talking about a job, and you were very open about your faith, and I found it really
Mhm.
refreshing at the time and brave, though. Like it clearly felt very normal to you. It was just like, this is just what I do. This is important to me, and so this is something that I talk about. I'd be really interested to hear, like, what's the role? Like, how does faith shape how you view career, profession? I think sometimes people feel like I felt like I had to keep my spirituality out of the workplace. Maybe that's part of it being in legal, but in HR or in people, it's kind of a similar role. I'd be curious to hear, like, how do you view faith and profession, career?
Right. So, I'm originally from Wisconsin. I actually did not grow up a Christian, but became a Christian in college. But there's this cultural element, right? So I moved to the Bay Area, and I remember my first week at work in the Bay Area. I was living in like a hotel, like waiting for our lease to start. We didn't know a soul. We kind of moved out here, my husband on the academic job market. I remember saying to somebody like, "Oh, what churches do you all go to?" Because we were gonna go church shopping. And people just like looked at me like I had 16 horns. Like, why would you be looking for one of those? And then somebody trying to be like very kind to me aside and was like, being a Christian in San Francisco, that is career suicide. Like, not the place for
Whoa.
it. And that was kind of like ooh, maybe I shouldn't say anything about this. So I kind of like tucked it under my hat, I think, the first handful of years I lived here, really.
Mm.
Um, but um the father-in-law of my pastor at the first church we ended up joining is actually like a guru on faith and work. He was like dean at Gordon College on the East Coast, and he's in his 80s now. Is like very generous of with his time, and he ended up living a few blocks away from us, and so we'd get coffee dates, and I just got to like seep in his wisdom. And I think what I came away from is like, we are not segmented beings, we are integrated beings as humans. And like, if you think about it, even like secular research will find that we have like mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional energy. And when one of those is like boxed off or segmented or depleted, it actually impacts everything else we do.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm like having to like hide this major part of me over here and segment it and check it at the door, I'm going to show up as less than myself. And I was also just challenged by like, in what ways could your faith actually make you show up better at work, help you
Mm.
connect to
Mm-hmm.
differently? Um, Ended up getting a master's degree in theology along the way. And that actually opened so many opportunities for me to just like, I'd say like, oh, I'm taking PTO all next week because I've got to go do a grad school intensive. And then people would be like, what are you doing grad school in? Right. And it started becoming way less scary. Like I did the casual carpool thing, which I know is like terrifying to people who don't live outside San Francisco, but you like pick up strangers and you commute across the bridge. And like often, people, I would have the same conversation. And I had so many great conversations with strangers about like their own faith journeys, their values at work. And I was like, actually, there's something here. And like the more I had those positive touch points where it's like people actually do want to connect on a deeper level, the more it gave me like bravery to show up. I
Mm-hmm.
think the other piece of the puzzle for me is like, especially grad school and like my relationship with Dr. Gill really challenged me to like think about work, especially as an HR practitioner, differently. right? So there's a group called Praxis that's come up with something called the Redemptive frame. And it's like, I've been trying to talk about this for years. And of course, they're strategists, they've done a much better job. But I think the easiest way for me to articulate it is like, you have companies that operate in like three concentric circles. Like when you
Mm-hmm.
usually think about capitalism, right? It's like the company is going to extract people as resources, sell for the top price they can, grab market share. It's like we win, you lose, you're part
Yes.
of the vision or you're not, right? So that is kind of like, call it what it is. It's exploitative. And
Mm-hmm.
often that's where people have that reaction to the for-profit sector or capitalism. And it's just not healthy. And I think deep inside us, we like know it's not supposed to be quite that way. So I think like I often think about like how we bring people into like the middle ring, right? Like ethical companies, right?
Mm.
That's where it's like we want to do good in the world. We want to think about the impact our product will have in the world, even like 2, 3 steps beyond. We want to treat our people well. The leaders can put the company first. It's not just about stoking their own ego.
Yes. Or making
And
a
like
lot of
this can be a
money.
really helpful place to operate. So like in my consulting practice, I often tell founders like, you got to at least be in this middle ring. And then the outer ring, I always tell them, I'm going to push you to be in the outer ring. Because that's that idea of like this double or triple or quadruple or however many bottom line, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm going to challenge you to like bless people even when it's a little uncomfortable, right? Like, can you give that more generous parental leave? And without even expecting things in return, just trust that by doing that, what will it do for your culture and your people? What could the ripples be? Like even
Mm.
generational ripples be by
Yes.
doing that. Like, could you bless your people by, like maybe you just missed that goal a little bit by a percent, but do you still pay the bonuses? Could you? Would you? So
Mm.
challenging people to bless people, challenging people to like bless their customers, like go that extra mile, try to delight them. Think about the impact the product has in the world. Like, could this have negative impacts and how do we buffer that because we believe it's worth it?
Mm-hmm.
Can we create mutual wins? And then like, can we start dying to ourselves, right? Like I think some of the best CEOs I know, those really generational leaders, it was never about them. It was
Yes.
about the mission. Are we actually building companies that are about what we're creating in the world, not just a valuation or an exit or a Times cover or 40 under 40 list? Those things fade. Those tend to not be the things people remember about you many, many years later. It's about how you made them feel and what you put into the world.
Mm.
So I think like my faith has very much shaped this idea of this redemptive frame is like, we all have bad days. We do crazy things when challenged with like runway or hard decisions or anger. We are human. I too am guilty of like seeping into this
Mm-hmm.
exploitative, like only one of us can
What can
win
I get?
frame,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
right? But it's like we don't stay there. Like we can ask for forgiveness and actually build trust by saying like, I got it wrong there. This is how I want to make it right, and hold me accountable to doing it well going
Mm.
forward. So I think my faith then definitely shows up in my HR consulting in that way of like, I believe we're here to bless people and renew and restore the world. So if I'm going to be part of that work, it starts right here with where I spend the majority of my waking hours.
Mm. That it's so beautiful to hear you describe it. And as you were talking about some of leave or bonuses or how can we bless our customer, I can imagine that this works when it suffuses as many aspects of the culture and the business as possible. And while you weren't even necessarily describing a specific company as you were talking about those things, I found myself nodding and being like, yeah, that's the kind of company that I would want to join, right? Like that's the kind of energy that I would want to see more of in the world. And I can just imagine that for companies that really do commit themselves to at least trying to build a redemptive culture, there's something in that that's like magnetic for talent, for client. It's like, oh yeah, they're not trying to screw me over. Like we're trying to win together, and they believe that that's possible. So, yeah, I just
It's huge.
imagine that companies that do that are more successful. I'd be curious to hear. Are there any like big name companies that people might know of who who you see, or even middle size, like any companies that you know of who are really committed to at least trying to do this work?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of companies actually out there that are doing this work. I don't know if I necessarily have a ton of
Hmm.
names off the top of my head, and I struggle to extrapolate to experiences I haven't lived, lest I speak someone else's
True.
truth.
True.
But
Hmm.
what I will say is like I've definitely encountered and like walked alongside friends who are at companies that are more in the exploitative phase, right? And I think we're seeing a lot of that right now. It's an employer's market. It's scary.
Hmm.
People are nervous about the robots and the AI and the efficiency and everything. So there's a ton of pressure, right? It's
Yeah.
like get back in office 5 days a week. You must work these hours. You must use this tooling. You must. And people are feeling like completely constrained in and just like they're a cog in a machine, bullet train machine, and they're not even human anymore. But I think there are also companies, right? Like one of my clients, it's just like they're fully remote. They don't necessarily have like written core collaboration hours, but everyone kind of has a sense of like, this is when
Hmm.
the majority of the company is online. I should be reasonably available. People are really flexible and be like, oh, I can shuffle this to like accommodate you. I see them put in actually just more hours, not because they have to or the CEO led with like grind harder. Like they put in more hours than like a client I had where the CEO was like, we need to put in more hours this quarter, right? Because they wanted to, they believed in what they were building and in the
Yes.
product. They loved each other's company. Like the people who were brought into this, like all kind of shared a vibe of like camaraderie and collaboration and like helpfulness, kindness,
Mm.
curiosity. So it was just very attractive. And their salaries really aren't the highest. It's kind of like a bootstrap style company. But what I've seen is people want to be there, right?
Yes.
It's like they don't have these golden handcuffs, which really are
Yeah.
handcuffs, right?
Hmm.
They feel fairly enough compensated, but like their days are worth those dollars because like they delight in what they're doing. They delight in the people they're working with. They adore the CEO and would follow him anywhere.
Mm.
And that's the vibe you wanna, like, actually build off of. Like, I think honestly, like, that's where people wanna be. They're gonna put in the late nights and the long hours following a leader like that. I definitely saw that in the nonprofit sector.
Hmm.
Like, I think the for-profit sector could learn a lot about that, is, like, people for example, at SpaceX, I don't think they followed Elon because he was, like, telling them to sleep on the factory floor. Honestly, I think early on, knowing some people who were there then, they slept on the factory floor because they actually believed they could build a better, safer, more cost-efficient rocket, and they believed
Yeah.
in space travel, and for a chunk of them, they, like, actually did wanna get to Mars and imagine the impossible was possible, right? So,
Mm.
like, Elon
Hmm.
gets this rap of being this, like, hardcore leader, and we should embrace more of that, but honestly, like, I think the hardcoreness came not from, like, Elon's mandating what which is what I think I saw more at Twitter, and
Yeah.
more from, like, people deeply believing in what they were building together,
Mm. Yes. Like
and I
being
think there's that dichotomy.
energized,
Yes.
energized by it. To your point, even around salaries, like, yes, the money, the financial compensation is one piece of the pie, but when you're really lit up by how you spend your days and who you're spending time with, and you feel like you're building something bigger with really good people, that's so compelling, right? People can't help but to
Totally.
want to show up and dedicate their energy in that way. Um, so you recently also posted on LinkedIn about how you more than doubled your income through what you called a recklessly generous, I love this term, recklessly generous strategy. And I think that it really ties in nicely to this idea of redemptive culture and abundance. Um, can you tell me more about that? You don't really hear about like recklessly generous business development.
Yeah, it's definitely not an orthodox strategy, right? So I think for me, there are like 3 layers, right? Business strategist at heart, there got to be layers. So it's like theological, philosophical, and like practical, right? So, like, theologically, it's pretty simple. Like, as a Christian, it's just not mine, right?
Mm.
Like, ultimately, Christianity is about radical generosity. If I believe I had a God who gave everything for me on the cross, so like, I could be part of this restoration movement in the world, then like nothing is my earned favor, right? So if everything I have belongs to God, like actually, how much of it is it for me to keep and hoard and like store up just for me, right?
Mm.
So
Mhm.
if I actually believe God is working a good work for me, it's about like putting it out there and being generous, right? Like the whole game is like love God, love others, help others know they are loved by God. Like that's it, full stop, period. So like if I really believe that theologically, and I'm constantly surrounding myself with people who will remind me of that and spending time in the word each day, then like take it to the next level. Like, then what is my philosophy for my business, right? Like, what am I doing this for? What do I want my legacy to be, right? And I think, like, for me, it's about values aligned impact, right? Like, I want leaders to have like wholeness and thriving companies. We just talked about like what this redemptive frame looks like. I want to be part of that. I want to create abundance there. And I believe there's a lot of that work to do in the world, like more than I could just do by myself. So
Mhm.
we need to bring others into that work. Um, I think the other philosophical part is just acknowledging how I'm made, right? I'm not a like everyday LinkedIn poster. Like I sometimes write something if I'm inspired, but I can't be the person to create enough
Yeah.
original content, Gemini or not, every day. I don't create free printables. I don't have like an email block to my Substack. Like bless the people who are gifted in that way. You do a beautiful job on Substack. It's just not for me. I like to just kind of be behind the scenes in the trenches doing
Mm.
the work.
Mhm.
I'm a relational creature. So for me, it was also about being in relationship with people, with founders, being in relationship with the people community, giving each other tips and help and work. So like as I think about my business development philosophy, it's actually like doing things for free. Like if people ask for help, I try to help them. They say,
Yes.
"Has anybody seen this before?" I say, "This is what I've seen. Does somebody have a resource to do this? Here's mine." Like, why do I need to hoard this? Right? Like this isn't a zero sum game. So like try to do that. And then what I've generally found from a business development philosophy is like then down the line when that person actually needs to hire somebody to do that or their friend needs somebody to solve the problem, they think Kate is the person who helps me.
Yes.
They should go talk to Kate. And they're not even thinking about like Kate might be able to charge this person money. It's
Mhm.
just like I want to connect you to somebody who could be a partner and help you. So that's kind of my like philosophical. And then there's like the practical, right? Like I just can't do it alone, right? Like if I actually don't want to just build this like wacky like pyramid scheme where I'm like slicing off chunks of other consultants' income, which just like it's not for me. Like other people can have their opinions on referral based businesses and slices of rev share, but I believe there's enough room there in this space. I sometimes need help to do this work too. Like I need somebody who's a specialty. Like I just signed contracts this morning to like bring in somebody who's a specialty recruiter to one of my clients who just needs somebody to
Mm.
go deep on recruiting. And that's not my deepest gift. It's also like I don't have enough hours to give to that client if I'm going to do this in a way that honors my family and spending time with my church and actually being present at dinner with my son. I can't do 90 hours a week. So practically, I need to kind of give that away. And so like
Mm.
I'm in the process of like rebuilding my business around this as like a collective where it is very much about I want to create a group of consultants where it's like we're not taking revenue cuts from one another, but we're sending each other work so we can better serve early stage founders. Cause it's like you usually make the double compromise. You can't afford the in house person. If you hire one
Yes.
specialist, you lose out on all the others. Like, what if we could actually just deeply and richly and almost crazy bless you with like giving you a taste of like good learning and development, good compensation practices, good recruiters, a good strategist, right? And we all know we can do more of our zone of genius work if we're doing it together. So it's like, I don't need to like force being the person to build everyone's comp plans. I can bring in a comp specialist and other strategic work will come to me. So
Mm.
that's kind of my philosophy. And then I'm also just cared for in this season, right? It's like I'm not trying to like fumble through this with my clients alone. I'm not serving
Yes.
them poorly. I'm not exhausting myself or trying to be up until 1 a.m.
No, and I think that it's beautiful because it's you're creating a structure that then just supports you in walking that talk, and you're
Yeah.
offering abundance and generosity to others, but you're also receiving it intern and sort of like participating in it as a unit. So it's very cool just to hear about your new entity. It's called Pharaoh.
Yes, we're gonna
Yes.
rebrand as Pharaoh Collective, so I guess by the time this launches, it'll be out there. So this is like my commitment. If it's not out there when this launches, we got other problems. But
We're going to
yes,
check
it's
back in on
in
that.
progress. I've got a few people who like want to come on this ride with me, who like I love being in the trenches with. I think it'll like bless and encourage a lot of founders. So I'm excited.
No, it's beautiful. It's like you don't have to do it alone, so you're not. It's
Exactly.
amazing.
Exactly.
Um, so as we start to close, I'd love to hear what advice would you give to someone who is starting off on building a life that's more authentic to them and values aligned?
Yeah, for sure. It really is like even if you're like me and it's like, oh, a whole quarter of rest, maybe you just start with an hour a day, a long walk, putting your phone in a box for one evening, like whatever you need to do. Like actually just tune out the noise and ask yourself, ask your body, ask your soul, like, when have I experienced the most joy? What do I actually believe? Like, what do I know to be true? Right? Like, there are usually
Mm,
only a handful of things of anything that we just know deep in our soul are true. And how does that shape how we want to show up in the world and do in the world? And to like then come out of that space with yourself and ask the people around you like what they see in you. Often we have a very harsh view, and it's like we need those people around us to be like, don't talk about my friend Kate, or don't talk about my friend Allie like
yes.
that. Like we talk to ourselves so harshly. Like actually hear about what your strengths and greatness is from the people around you, and use those data points. Like almost act like an investigator, a collector, like just the same way our kids go on a scavenger hunt. Treat it like a scavenger hunt to say, like, what brings me joy? What brings me purpose and meaning? Think I'm great at. And I think that intersection of like what I enjoy and what gives me purpose and what I hear I'm great at, that's your sweet spot. We all have one, and the world needs that sweet spot from you. So I'm confident you'll find work or avocation, even non-paid work that just like lights up your soul if you start asking those questions.
Mm. And what I love about what you're describing is that it brings together that sort of like scientific, systematic approach, but with an undercurrent of play that I think so many of us, like I was saying, are missing in our careers or think that we don't deserve. But yeah, I think Kate, your story shows that it's like work can be fun. Um, and work can be meaningful and work can bring you financial abundance, but like spiritual abundance too. All of these things are possible at once.
Yes. I think that too often we just assume it's all trade-offs, but
Yes.
actually you can have a lot of different pieces and in different seasons. And it's also good to give yourself grace to like want and need different things in different seasons. And that's good
Mm,
too.
no. Well, Kate, thank you so much for joining me. Kate Kruizenga of Pharaoh Collective. You can check out her work on LinkedIn, and I'll have a link to Pharaoh Collective in the show notes. Such a joy to reconnect with you, Kate, and share your story. Such an inspiration, really.
Thanks, Sally. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.